Hello everyone, and welcome back to the OhCritDND YouTube channel. This time we're actually going to look into some of the homebrew system rules that I've been using within the campaign here. Recently, within the last few sessions, we started to look at tool proficiencies, the artisan tool proficiencies, just a little bit differently to try to give them a little bit more weight and importance so that people can use them to do cool things. If you've been keeping up with the season or for the campaign so far, the character Lothric Feanwyn, a big part of his story is his alchemy. Like, he's an alchemist. He wants to be able to make things, do things using his alchemist supplies. So having proficiency at alchemist supplies, while helpful, isn't necessarily all that meaningful because right now there isn't a really good set of rules for using them. So I decided to, for Lothric and then for all my players, make them different tool proficiency rule sets. So today we're going to look at Alchemist Supplies as the rule set, as a part of the new kind of homebrew tools kind of series here on the channel. For those who don't know, we're looking at what Alchemy Supplies is. Alchemist Supplies are just a type of artisan's tool. They're designed so that you can practice a trade or find a way to kind of make money and do these other things. Think about what an alchemist would be. Someone that is basically, if you were to take it into modern day terms, they're a chemist. Alchemy, though, in a world of magic, has a few different kind of magical or other connotations to it because it's alchemy, not strictly chemistry. So there's a certain amount of harnessing and understanding the natural weave of magic to be able to infuse different chemical concoctions with additional powers. In the game so far, really all that we know is that it is a type of tool. It is worth 50 gold pieces and weighs 8 pounds. And that's the whole set of Alchemist Supplies. That would be your beakers, your other kind of chemical tools for refining, extracting, and refining different things to be able to make your substances. And then the note at the bottom is really just Alchemy Supplies allow you to add your proficiency bonus to any check that you would make with these Alchemy Supplies. So those could be used within the normal game to try to understand specific things. If you were to find a pool of acid or a room full of acid, you could use your Alchemist Supplies and a small sample to determine more information about the acid. Valuable in its own right, but maybe we could do more. And that's kind of what we wanted to make here. So, when you're adventuring within the world, within this Alchemist Supplies rule set, raw ingredients can be found within the world. And they can be used to create a variety of different alchemical mixtures once they've been refined. The collection of these ingredients is really up to you as the player and the DM that you're playing with. Work with your DM just in general for any of these rule sets. They may or may not be allowed in whatever game you're playing, but it will always be up to the DM what you're able to find. Depending on if you're looking for different herbs or flowers or flora or things kind of along those likes, if you aren't in a region where those kinds of things would be, based on your DM's discretion, they'll tell you if you find something or if you find something else or what that might be. Within our campaign so far, Lothric can basically, I told the players, if you're looking for something and you want to come up with a random fantasy name for something like Deathbell, then sure, we can look into that and I'll tell you whether or not it's that big of a thing. And then now Deathbell just is a part of our campaign. And so going off of that as improv, I would have to decide kind of split second what is Deathbell, and then kind of go into outside of session what Deathbell can do for Lothric. Is it a fancy flower? Does it have magical capabilities? Does it have any inherent ability other than just being a flower along those lines? So those kinds of things are how I would recommend actually working with your players as a dungeon master and working with your dungeon master as players to find ingredients within the world. Once you do find a raw ingredient, however, you have to refine it into kind of a refined, ready-to-use state. In their natural state, they're a little bit more unstable. Think of it this way. If you were to kill a dragon and you want to take a set of teeth out of this dragon's mouth, you would be able to do so after successfully collecting them. And it's not as easy as I shove tooth into bottle for it to actually work and become a worthwhile ingredient. It comes down to, at that point, a refinement challenge. Maybe that tooth has to find a way, you have to find a way to dissolve it into another tincture so that it can actually be then dried into a powdered form, removing any of the acidic aspects that you use to kind of melt it down. Those kinds of things are what you would have to end up doing, is look at how exactly can I refine it from something that's completely raw to something that I can actually use when making things. So how you can refine things is determined in a refinement skill challenge. Basically, you as an alchemist can choose any skill that you want, with the DM setting the appropriate DC. They can say it out loud before you make the roll, or they can tell you to make the roll and have it otherwise in the background, depending on different higher stakes or anything else for kind of what it will take to actually use that skill to refine an item. Sometimes when you use your skills, one is going to be a little bit more useful than the other. One skill might allow you to, if you are going to try to be removing the thorns and other things from a cluster of weeds, making it so that it's just a cluster of weeds, a dexterity check in general or a survival check might be more applicable than, we'll say, insight. Right? You're not going to be able to tell necessarily anything more than I'm looking at my clump of weeds if you're using insight that way. You could try to argue it, but then the DC would be higher than a more applicable skill. In addition, during this skill challenge, if you repeatedly use the same skill, the DC goes up. Basically, each skill is refining further and further the raw form to its refined form. And so you can use an Arcana check, but the idea is as you go, things are changing. And so as you go from raw to transitory to final product, you have a harder and harder time using the same skill versus just varying things, which is kind of a nice mechanic as well, just on the basis of, hey, you want to apply a few different things there as well, to be able to kind of highlight the skills that you think might be applicable. It is way more interesting for people to try to come up with a way that something applies to a situation rather than just saying, well, I'm just going to do this 12 times. You could do that, or you could find something else that might make your play just a little bit more fun. Otherwise, the refinement is reliant on the number of successes present. To succeed in this refinement, you do need to pass 2 of the 3 total checks. But natural 20s and natural 1s come in as a additional success or failure mechanic. So, the outcome is, at the very least, 2 successful checks, your refinement just flat succeeds. And if you do not pass them, then the ingredient is lost. The refinement fails and the raw ingredient is lost. You don't gain a refined ingredient, it just is gone. So you run the risk during the refinement challenge of not being able to actually utilize an ingredient. Now, here's the thing. Because natural 1s exist and natural 20s exist, natural 1s are reflected as a double failure. And the natural 20s, by kind of the same token, are reflected as a double success. So a double failure means that you can have potentially, 0 or negative successes, but really just 0 successes as basically just a critical failure state for your refinement process. And natural 20s mean that you can roll way more than just 3 checks. So, looking at the refinement skill challenge kind of table here, if you succeed absolutely none of your refinement skill challenge checks. Your refinement fails, the ingredient is lost, and you roll a d6. On a 1 or a 2, your Alchemist Supplies break. That means that there is a third of the time you're going to break your tools and you have to go get more tools, which may or may not be possible when you're out kind of on the road, making it so that it's really hard to pursue the trade. This is very unlikely to happen unless things go very poorly for your refinement challenge. If the dice are totally not with you, there is a chance that you could break these tools and not be able to use this system anymore. But for the most part, you really just run the risk of the ingredient being lost. And so if you succeed on only one of them, your ingredient is lost and the refinement fails. Simple, right? The minute that you hit 2, the refinement succeeds, flat successful. With 3, the refinement succeeds, and the refined ingredients are worth an additional 10 gold pieces on top of what they would be. And then 4 plus, just in case you were to roll 3 nat 20s in a row, which is just amazing. You could have refinement succeeds, and it's worth an additional 100 gold pieces. With this, you can kind of take the refined ingredients and put them into your inventory. They would not necessarily weigh anything unless your DM rules that the refined ingredient weighs enough. Otherwise, I would say for the most part, they're stored inside of your Alchemist Supplies. But put them into your inventory as refined blank, for whatever it is. Refined Death Bell, refined Dragon's Teeth, stuff like those. With any additional kind of value that you would get from the refinement process attached to it. So, refined Death Bell plus 10 gold pieces. Simple enough. What you can do with these, then, is take a look at the ingredients per target table here. You can use the refined ingredients to create a number of different potions and effects. So what you can do is say, alright, I'm looking through the magic items table for like potions. I want to make a potion of like Storm Giant Strength. What you do then is look at the rarity according to the table and the minimum gold piece value that you have to meet. Those are the things that are kind of determinate. So you look at the rarity and follow the details across. So if you have a rare potion, for example, a rare level potion, you have to meet a certain ingredient value of 2,500 gold pieces. You also have to have, at the very least, 3 ingredients. These ingredients, you can use whatever you want, based on what you think in your inventory is the most applicable ingredient. So if you wanted to make a potion of Frost Giant Strength, it's probably going to be a little bit more valuable to use Frost Giant toenail clippings, like it specifically calls out in the Frost Giant Potion of Strength kind of details block. If you use that, it's probably going to be worth more. And so DMs, you have the ability to look at and apply different values to the refined ingredients that your players actually have. And looking at that, based on how applicable it is, you can choose to say, yeah, that's worth X amount of gold. That's worth, 200 gold for making this. Basically, that's where you get the majority of what you need to make this thing. So, using the example of a potion of Frost Giant Strength, if you have that Frost Giant toenail, that's worth, 2,000 gold, we'll say, for it. All you have to do is come up with 500 more gold worth of ingredients, and you can use whatever other ingredients you have. And your DM will kind of work with you in the moment to kind of figure out what exactly it's going to take. Once you have all of the ingredients, you just have one more step as you go through. These steps are typically going to be a Genesis skill challenge, kind of like the refinement challenge. Looking at kind of the value that's been assigned for each ingredient, and there is an ingredient tier for tiers 1 through 5 of the value range that you should be able to assign an ingredient. So as a DM, if I were going to look at that Frost Giant toenail, I would mark it as a tier 4 or 5 ingredient, which would allow it to be worth anywhere from 850 to 5,000 gold. Right? So if you have that amount of gold pieces spent and the correct number of ingredients spent into making the potion, then you go to the Genesis skill challenge. So all you have to do is succeed on 2/3 of all of the checks that you need to make. The number of the checks is equal to the number of ingredients. So if you use only 3 ingredients, then great. All you really need to do is make those 2 successful checks. But if you use way more than 3, and you have, a bunch of ingredients that just are not applicable to the potion and don't make sense for the potion in and of itself, and you're just jamming it all together to make it work and meet the gold piece threshold, then sure. But you're probably going to sit there and make like 20 checks, and you're more likely to fail these checks just because, my God, it's going to be a little bit more difficult in repetition. The more often you do something, the more often you find flaws in that thing. So once you actually do go through the Genesis challenge, realistically you are just making these different skill checks. Same as the refinement challenge, to actually incorporate the ingredient in and of itself. When you pick for each one, you want to be able to incorporate the ingredient itself into the mixture without kind of failing. Natural 1s, once again, are 2 failures, and natural 20s are 2 successes, but they don't necessarily improve too much. The states for success for the Genesis Skill Challenge are a less than 2/3, 2/3, and total success. And so if you make less than the threshold of 2/3, the Genesis fails and you lose all your refined ingredients, which is quite a bit of time. 2/3 is where you find your success. Nothing else happens, but you get the magic item. So you have made yourself and your party magical items that could potentially cost you quite a bit more in terms of just buying it from the store. So then total success gives you an additional 1d4 doses that you're able to create. So if you use the correct number of ingredients and have good kind of valuable ingredients, that makes it so that you can only have to succeed a few challenges for checks and then absolutely blow it out of the park with all successes on your Genesis skill challenge, you have a pretty good chance at getting extra bonus ingredients kind of potion values. So if you wanted to make that individual single potion of Frost Giant Strength, now you had a total success on your challenge, you roll a 1d4 and you didn't make just 1, you actually made 4, because you were able to incorporate the ingredients in such a way that you were able to refine more of it and reduce the waste associated with the reaction. That lets you make quite a bit more, and you basically can take your party and give everybody that strength, and you become absolutely terrifying units for what? I believe it's like an hour for that potion. Or you can make everybody potions of Dragon's Breath and just run straight through the bad guy's dungeon and be living flamethrowers. Makes it kind of a little bit more valuable that way to actually be able to make these things. And that was kind of the goal for the Alchemists Supplies system, is we really wanted to design a system that allows you to take better control and stock into things, so that when you do fight a monster and you kill it, sometimes now your next thought is, what do you think I can get from this thing? I want to harvest some of its bits. I'm not going to just harvest dragon hide to make scale mail armor. I might want some of that for making other things. So that's kind of the Alchemist Supplies proficiency system as we have made it here. If you liked this, keep kind of your eye out for more. I'm going to be trying to release the other tools proficiency systems as I make them. But it's kind of our start going through the list. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. The kind of rule set for this is in PDF form, or actually it's in a Google Doc form, in the description below. Otherwise, here, have a good rest of the day. Thank you all for watching, and be good to one another. Bye.